Okay, we're live. Hey, everybody, welcome back to 1455's The 1455 interview series. I'm Sean Murphy, the executive director at 1455. We wanted to do one of these a week, and we thought we were being optimistic, but we've got such a good response. We're doing more than one a week, but if you're a writer watching this or know a writer that might want to participate, send them our way because we want to include as many disparate voices as possible. It's with great excitement that I welcome today's guest, Susan Henderson. This is kind of a follow-up of sorts because Susan was good enough to let us use an excerpt from the anthology she's in, which I'll read about in a second. But, I'll explain that in a second. So let me introduce our guest, Susan. Susan Henderson is a Hawthornden International Fellow, a 5-time Pushcart Prize nominee, and the recipient of an Academy of American Poets Award. She's the author of the novels Up from the Blue and The Flicker of Old Dreams, both published by HarperCollins. Of course, she's also featured in the new anthology Alone Together, Love, Grief, and Comfort in the Time of COVID-19. We had a special session in our Lit Fest this summer about that, which you can check out on our website or our YouTube page. And of course, I mentioned our second issue of Movable Type, 1455's publication, had some exclusive excerpts from this awesome anthology, including Susan's piece, Quarantine, which I strongly suggest you check out and spread around. She's a lifetime member of the NAACP and the National Book Critics Circle, and she lives in New York and blogs at the writer's support group, litpark.com. Susan, thanks for being here. It's a pleasure to see you in person.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So let's, as always, let me get the timer started.
I feel like I'm on a game show. This is great.
I know, right? And what a goofy game show host you have hosting us. But here we go, 1455. Let's jump right in. Okay. What's the first book that made you want to be a writer or a book that changed your life?
So I got lit up by books at a really young age, and it was not for the story, it was for the sound. So I would have to say Mother Goose, Hickory Dickory Dock, Fox and Socks, Dr. Seuss. And then I didn't used to separate books from music, and my mom was a big fan of a woman named Betty Carter who did all this scatting. And I just loved the sound of words and the emotion of words, even if they had no meaning. Like, I loved the nonsense of it. But there was actually a specific book, and that was in 9th grade, Miss Martin's class. She assigned Maya Angelou's I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. And the idea that you are writing what you can't physically speak, that was just like bingo. That was, as soon as I found that, it was like, that's what I want to do.
Awesome. That's great. And that's the first time both of those or all of those have been invoked in this series. So that's great.
No one said Fox and Socks before?
No, I think people are afraid to go that far back. I think people talk about like the first proper book. We had a couple of Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys references, but I agree that going back to when we first started hearing sounds and putting words together, for a lot of us, that put the hook in us and it never got out.
Yeah.
Who would you say your most profound artistic influence is?
Well, you can see a lot of my artistic influences floating behind me, but it's actually a man named Melvin Brooks. And Melvin was my high school janitor, and he's the first person I ever shared my writing with. I wrote from the time like 2nd grade on, and Melvin was a poet too, and we just sort of found that out about each other. So after school, after he vacuumed the cafeteria, we would sit in the back, and we always had to sit really close to the wall because he had a little cassette recorder that he brought, and he would play Jessie Norman, who is his favorite singer. She's an opera singer. And we would play Jessie Norman, and we would share our poems. And my poems were horrible. His were a little bit horrible too, but they were, there was such a sense of permission, and there was such a sense. He's probably the first person that really gave me a sense that my voice mattered. And and to just write, and the permission to read stuff that was kind of unfinished and not polished. And that was everything to me. Everything that happened in my trajectory happened because of Melvin.
That's
So
incredible.
Melvin Brooks.
Have you written about that at all? Have you written about that relationship?
I've blogged about him.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah,
good. That's incredible. Thank you for sharing that.
sure.
Okay, on a little bit lighter note, or not really, because this stuff is important. What's an album or movie or both that you recommend without reservation?
Well, a movie I saw just last week that I highly recommend. It's a claymation movie. It's called Mary and Max.
Hmm.
I think it's by Adam somebody. You should
Okay.
always know the writer's name. Adam somebody. And it's about Asperger's, and it's the guy Max is played by Philip Seymour Hoffman, and it's phenomenal, and it's really short. My favorite all-time movie is for sure Pan's Labyrinth. Um, it kind of goes back to my love for Hansel and Gretel, kind of like that the way that you can have more emotional truth the further you get from reality, you can somehow pinpoint the emotion better. Albums. I definitely have so I grew up outside of DC, so I definitely have DC musical taste, go-go and stuff.
Hmm.
But I would have to say Parliament's Mothership Connection, or it's a really tough call, or Funkadelic's One Nation Under a Groove, because I probably like Parliament's Mothership Connection better, but the song One Nation Under a Groove, and then bookending it with Maggot Brain, where which opens with Mother Earth is pregnant for the third time, for y'all have knocked her up. And that album is just like fantastic for me, and a nod to ELO's Out of the Blue, just for the happiness.
Ah, so you just made me so happy, and of course Eddie Hazel's immortal solo in Maggot Brain, which
Oh, I'm so glad you do it.
allegedly George Clinton told him, just I want you to play like your mama just died, and that's
I heard that.
amazing. Well, you're definitely the first person that's brought that album up, and I couldn't be happier about it. So
Oh,
our work here is done, but we'll keep going. What about of the first, the best first or last line of any book?
I don't remember any lines in particular, but I do know the images. I would say for sure, As I Lay Dying, the opening image of building the mother's coffin while she's upstairs and still alive. The building the coffin outside of her window is just like, there's not really a better opening than that. I also love the opening. They Came Like Swallows, William Maxwell, and you have Bunny in bed, basically driving to the emotional heart of living with the Spanish flu, as but from an 8-year-old's kind of experience. Um, Endings. So there are people who know how to stick the ending, like Cormac McCarthy can always land his story, but my favorite endings actually don't land, they lift. So I would say like Song of Solomon. It's really hard to, I don't want to wreck the ends of books, but there's a lift off in Song of Solomon. And there's I would say the end of uh We Have Always Lived in the Castle.
Mm.
The ruined house in the sky, trying not to wreck it.
Yeah.
Goon Squad, Ruth Ozeki's whatever her book was called. I want to call it Sky Soldier. Um, uh, those were good endings too, because they had that kind of like musical coda feel at the end, where they just kind of like something rose rather than someone doing this at the end,
Yeah, well, and I also appreciate you kind of elucidate the dilemma we have as passionate absorbers of culture. It's
Yeah.
impossible to say one, so I endorse the multiple answers for some of these questions, because it is like hacking off a limb to try to decide what your favorite book is. But
Yeah, and
it's,
tomorrow it'll be a different one.
that's
Yeah.
right, and that's part of the whole. That's the whole point. So good. How about an underrated author that you'd love to give a shout out to?
I don't know if they're underrated, but I haven't met enough people that have read these books that, like, if you have one day left on Earth, you better go read. Like, if you haven't read Ocean Vuong's Night Sky with Exit Wounds, if you haven't read Max Porter's Grief is the Thing with Feathers, if you haven't read Naomi Shihab Nye's Varieties of Gazelle, those are like, if you haven't read those, oh my God, read those, because I would love to read those for the first time. Hold on, I'm gonna see if I can grab it. My underrated author. The reason why you haven't heard of Dennis Norris, maybe, who I know is gonna be a future MacArthur winner. They write some of the most exciting work, and all I have is this teeny little chapbook. It's like these little tiny stories, and it was sort of like they're similar to like James Baldwin's Giovanni's Room, just that kind of like beautiful, emotional, kind of swimmy. You just feel like you're spiraling into this emotional place. But I'm very, very excited about Dennis Norris, because they're starting to write a long work, and when that comes out, I'm going to be like the first person to buy it. So.
Great. Well, the other ostensible drawback of this series is it gives everyone, it adds to everyone's collection, but that's also the point of what we're all doing here. So
yeah
we encourage that. All right, my obligatory question: why have you not read Moby Dick? Or if you have, what's a classic that you've been meaning to get around and checking out?
Okay, so I was assigned Moby Dick in either 7th or 8th grade, and I remember very specifically sitting in the Williamsburg, I grew up in Northern Virginia, sitting up in the Williamsburg Intermediate School library, not happy, not happy with that book. And so to be honest, I was a blackout drunk in middle school, so I didn't really have a lot of headspace for a book that required me to kind of settle down so much. But I do think it can be the right book at the wrong time. Like, I remember when I read Catcher in the Rye, I was 30, and I was just like, what the hell? But if I had been 11, that might have been my favorite book,
That's actually come up in this series, that book in particular, but the notion that, certain books.
It's so bad. It's so bad for grown-ups, but it's so cool if if you're like under 15, maybe.
Right.
But you know what? I'm gonna try Moby Dick again for you.
I encourage it, and what's come up in the series actually is that what people that have read it agree is it's not only not boring, but it's actually a very funny book. There's a lot of humor and soul in it, but
okay,
it's not to proselytize. It's really to have fun with it, but definitely encourage you to do that.
Okay, for sure.
So if you would you be able to describe a single theme or topic that your work seeks to address?
I think the one thing that's for sure through all of my work is I have a thing for Stoics. I love to take a character who can't emote, and I try to get the reader to feel the thing that they can't express. So I would say that.
Great. And folks watching, you're just going to have to read the books to figure out what she means by that. So duly noted. All right, we talk in this series about writing routines and writer's block. What are your general views? Do you believe in them? What do you think? Do you have a writing routine, etc.?
My routine is it's tricky. So the main way I get into a book, I actually fall in love with settings first, and my routine is I physically wander the setting that I've chosen and take it in with all the senses. And what I'm wondering and looking for is the moral gray area of the setting. So that's always how I start. And then my main way of writing is I I can only think when I'm walking, so I had to learn how to write while walking. Um, like with this book, I wrote the entire thing hiking. Um, so basically, I have my phone in my back pocket, and I just talk into a voice memo app,
Yeah.
and that's how I do it. But this is a way oversimplification of the failure and the mystery involved in crafting a book.
You're the first person that, so I've definitely gotten in the habit. I think partly it's a technological thing, but I can write poetry on walks, but I have never really written long form. So that's impressive and inspiring. Wow.
Yeah. I can't edit walking, but I write way better and more coherently talking. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Wow. Cool. All right. So on a different note, what
Mhm.
about a setback, artistic or otherwise, that ended up maybe putting you on the trajectory that you're on now?
So all writing, I feel like, is a setback. But I had my first book was a devastating setback. I sold my first book to Viking, and then ended up having to buy the book back, not knowing if I could sell it. And the reason that I ended up buying the book back from them was I got a call from the editor. So Viking's a division of Penguin, and the book eventually sold to HarperCollins. But the the editor called me. She's like, "Hey, I really love it. We don't need a lot of edits, but I wonder if we could change Tilly's personality a little bit, and can you get it back to me in 3 weeks?" Well, Tilly was, so my first book was a story about suicide as narrated by weirdo 8-year-old Tilly. And I was just like, if I change her personality, every choice she makes is going to be different. And
Right.
so that's not a small edit. And also, I didn't want to write that book. And so it became a lesson for me. I'm all for rigorous edits, but it became a lesson to me that don't let someone else take the pen out of your hand. You have to, there's a line between a rigorous hard edit that you're not anxious to do, um, and someone overstepping, uh, someone wanting you to write the story they want you to write, not the story you need to write. you know
Yeah, and there's such a fine line, right, in the growth of a writer between confidence and humility, and knowing when the advice is warranted, and knowing when you have to stick with your gut, because only the author knows the investment of time and energy and
yeah,
passion that goes into that. So
but
that's
in this business how terrifying it is to, it's so hard to sell something, that to take it back not knowing if you'll ever sell it again, that was really hard. That's how it was such a hard decision. I lost so much weight
oh gosh.
while I was, that people were asking me if I had cancer. Like I was that distraught, and it was killing me. So
Well, congratulations for having the courage to see that through, and then of course there's a happy ending because the right house found it and published it. So that's great. Um, so I think this is a good pivot from that. How would you define or explain what literary success means to you?
so my bar is unrealistically high to me. The literary success is a national book award, so that's just where the bar is. So whatever I do in my career, as long as I'm not winning a national book award, I'm not really successful. um, but more honestly, I'm trying to open a dialogue when I write. And that's, I take a moral gray area that I'm conflicted about, and I start a dialogue, and that's my number one goal.
Right on. How about something that you wish you had known as a writer 10 or even 20 years ago?
I think as a writer and as a human being, I just think, like, get a dog. Get a like, everything in life is better if you have a dog. It sorts all your shit out.
I couldn't agree more. So you have to share what do you have a particular breed? You strike me as a
I,
mutt person.
yeah, I have a mutt. He's actually over there. I have a mutt named Douglas, and he it just gets you right with everything. It teaches you how to love better, how to live better, how to let stuff go better. Yeah.
I read a quote, and I always butcher it. I should actually look it up so I can quote it right. But it was something along the lines of, "We are not here to make dogs more human-like, but to become more dog-like." And it
Yeah.
seems cute, but when you think about it, it's like they live in the moment. They're loyal. They're loving. So yeah. So thank you for that. That's the first time that that's been invoked. But I know that pets are important to everyone, but for writers especially, it's such a solitary endeavor. Like on a day when you're writing and you're not feeling it, at least you have one fan that's always
Yeah.
going to be there.
Yeah.
All right. So in closing, how about a 1 minute or so exhortation for a beginning writer that's looking for advice?
Uh, okay. So I actually feel this really strongly. If you think of if you think of a book as writing, then you only have one tool, which is words. But if you think of a book as telling a story or creating a story, then you can walk around and photograph things, you can draw things, you can collage, you can sing, you can do what I do is I have it all like pinned up on my bulletin board, and you can kind of see the mathematical shape and weight and balance of your book. So my feeling is tell the story however you can. Each day might be a different mode. And if you can't get in through this door, go through another door. And if this tool's not working for you one day, then use this other tool. So if the words aren't coming, then talk. If the words aren't coming, draw it, you know. So
Susan, the kind of gentle wisdom and grounded generosity and obvious passion for what you do, and what we all kind of respond to as fans of the form is so abundant. I hope that this conversation really turns people on to checking out your work. And I'll remind everyone you can see Susan in action in the most recent edition of Movable Type, which I hope inspires you to pick up the anthology a
it's a
little bit better.
beautiful issue.
Oh,
That
thank
whole
you.
issue, it's just physically beautiful.
We're working with a designer named Morgan Ryan, and she's a miracle worker. So she and I are not magazine publishers, but we're making it up as we go. But we want to do justice to the beautiful writing that we're getting, and it meant a lot to me to showcase your work and the others accordingly. So, Susan, thank you for being here. We'll be in touch. We'll look forward to seeing you again at a future 1455 event. But in the meantime, best of luck. Go give your dog a kiss. Thank you for inspiring me with those amazing photos behind you. And again, we'll look forward to talking to you again at a future point.
Oh, thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Okay, cheers.